And society left to itself will grow rotten. It needs salt. And God says, you are the salt. But salt that is in the salt cellar, that's not ground out of that salt grinding machine and penetrating the meat where it's really needed, it is of no use. And if salt has lost its saltiness, it is of no use. And we have to hold our hands up and say, dear God, where has been our saltiness in our world and in our society? We have let them down. Somebody asked me this week, do you believe that this is the judgment of God? I said, yes, certainly. Next question, please. Well, how can you say this is the judgment of God? Do we understand what the judgment of God is? Do we understand it here in Kensington Temple? The judgment of God is not God standing up in heaven and practicing the javelin with a few lightning strokes. God is not going to enter the Olympics. Do you know what judgment is? Judgment is God handing us over to our own ways. That's judgment. If you want to study this further, read the book of Romans chapter 1, where the Apostle Paul is preparing for his preaching mission to Rome. Rome, the capital of the empire, the big city, full of corruption, violence, and every other sin imaginable. And he describes this. He describes Roman society. But it's not just Roman society that we read about there, because it looks like the daily newspaper in modern 20th century Britain. And here's Paul's analysis. He said, you know, all of this is because we have not kept the knowledge of God in our hearts. And even though God has so fully and freely revealed himself in the things that he has made, all his glory is so evident from the things that he's made, even to his eternal power and divinity. But knowing the truth, humanity's turned away from that truth. Therefore, it says 3 times, God handed them over to their own thinking, to their own ways. You could put it this way. If society says we want God out of our lives, then all that is left is ourselves and what the mess we make of things. But it is time for us to say, God, we don't want you out, we want you in. Amen. And what excites me was, instead of just listing a long list of things and problems and diagnosing the ills of society, the more he lists, the more excited he gets. He said, this is amazing, it's wonderful. There's so much violence, there's so much hatred, there's so much rebellion, there's so much disobedience to parents. It's amazing. I'm so excited. Say, Paul, why are you excited? He says, because I know that it is ready for them to hear the gospel. And the gospel of Jesus Christ is the only answer. And Paul says, we have the answer. I'm so excited because I have the cure. I have the antidote. And he says, yes, the wrath of God is being revealed as society continues to reap the fruit of its own ways. But he says there's something else which is being revealed from heaven. The answer is not going to come through social reforms. The answer is not going to come through political edicts. The answer is not going to come from tough policing or water cannons or evicting robbers out of their council homes. The answer is not going to come through tough sentencing. All these things may or may not have their place, but it pales into insignificance when we understand the answer comes from God above. It comes from heaven. When God says, I'm going to remove violence, and you're going to build the walls of salvation, and you're going to understand the gates of praise, so that the city becomes a place of joy and rejoicing and salvation and healing and peace and shalom, it is because the solution lies with me. And Paul gets so excited. He says there's something else being revealed from heaven. And he says it is the righteousness of God. And therefore he says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for the gospel is the power of God for salvation.